also trade, and I believe she was also saying about healthcare. Uh, uh, those are the areas that the World Bank will not change the policy. Thank you very much, Ibu Satu, for sharing the view. Now, I'm going to go into Pak Peter. Uh, is there any adaptive changes, Pak, in the policies from your side? Pak Peter?
Thank you very much. Let me from the outset say, of course, that as the crisis evolves, of course, our programming also evolves. But if you allow me to make just a couple of remarks, I think a number of speakers have underlined the importance that it is an overall objective to make our partner countries, to make Indonesia, as well as us in Europe, we're not that different in that regard, to make ourselves more resilient against this new type of external shocks that we have just experienced. And I think both Gusab and Winfried have before outlined a little bit what we have lost in development markers here in Indonesia through this crisis. So I think for me personally, at this time, the big question is that obviously we need to maybe have a second look at the whole issue of social inclusion, of the poverty issue, because we see the figures are pretty as we learned. We have assuming that this is a rising path that we see in Indonesia, and the poverty issue will finally come to a solution by itself. Now, this I think has to be subject to a fresh look. I think the entire issue of shock absorption capacity in the social sector is very important, and that is why also we try to, in an initial contribution, support the program of the ADB in that regard, and we are very much looking into the social tissue of the Indonesian society and how the government is dealing with this. I believe that what I said before, there's a very interesting op-ed by Klaus Schwab. It's also printed out in the Jakarta Post. And basically, the bottom line is we should come out of this crisis in a better world than the world was before we went into the crisis. So we should also look at the crisis as a chance. And I mean, he also mentioned, of course, climate policy and so on. And if you look at the psychological reaction of societies throughout the world, I mean, one thing is amazing is that if I listen to podcasts with young activists in climate policy these days, they say, look, there's the world, there's an incredible adaptive capacity. And we always think things are possible, and here the world comes to a standstill. Basically, there are so far no civil wars, with maybe few exceptions, but anyway, so there is apparently the adaptive capacity of our countries, of societies, of the world is maybe higher than we thought before, and this is an insight that we should also use. When it comes to Indonesia, particularly for us, it is also very important that in everything we do, we look at Indonesia also in its role in ASEAN, its leadership role in ASEAN. And that is why Indonesia is one of our 6 global development partners around the world. So this role maybe even become, for us, more important than for the European Union in general, more important because of the particular role in this Southeast Asian region. So we would like to also look into the possibilities to enhance our policy dialogues, not only sort of be on this donor recipient logic, but also broaden our context to a broader policy dialogue on certain issues. And then also, of course, look within ASEAN to what extent many of the aspects that we are dealing with now are of a regional nature, and see whether we can do some empowerment, or we can help to empower ASEAN also to strengthen its response capacity. Finally, let me say I fully subscribe to what was said before by Alistair, I think, on coordination. I think it's very important, more than ever, especially in this crisis, that we work even closer together, trying to learn from each other and be guided. I mean, frankly speaking, okay, we have a substantial development program in Indonesia, but of course, I think as far as the basic analysis is concerned, at least as far as the embassy is concerned, we rely very much on you, the here on the World Bank here, because you provide an analytical basis for everything we are doing that, okay, our development bank can also do, but I think as many of our programs are sort of creating, we are cooperating in many programs, so I think it's important that we're reading from the same sheet. And that is why I think coordination will become even more important in the future. I leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Papitan. We took note, took note of what you just mentioned. Leo is also taking seriously on the policy dialogue, and Indonesia is sitting in ASEAN, as well as, of course, once again, coordination of all development partners in responding to COVID-19 pandemic. And I assure you that Bapenas will want to coordinate all of the development partners to working better with us. Now, I would like also to listen to Pawintri. Could you describe what AGP's policies? Is there any changes in the policies?
Thank you. Well, yes, we have the amongst the many known unknowns that we are facing. We know there's a huge devastating impact. We know the crisis will be with us. We just don't know exactly how long it will go. So we are planning, all of us are planning scenarios and phases. So the immediate is which, as I also explained earlier, for us has been support, full focus on health security and on budget support to help the government, kind of work towards stabilization. But also on, very importantly now, on analytical knowledge support in helping government think how our expertise in that would lie in the economic, fiscal, and social and poverty analysis. What are the impacts of various bounce back strategies, economic recovery strategies? We are working right now on cost benefit analysis of various COVID response strategies with the Ministry of Finance, for example. So there's a lot of that work going on, and I would like to make one point here, and other panelists very rightly, obviously, pointed out the need for close cooperation amongst ourselves with the government or government within government, the development partners amongst themselves, etc. But also the cooperation between countries in the region and globally. I think that's a very important point because nobody has been through this kind of crisis. So we are all tapping a little bit in the dark. We are trying to get the data and we're trying to analyze as good as we can, but there is no textbook that exists for Indonesia and other countries to look at. But some countries have, all countries have in their own way, they have gathered a lot of experience in a very short time, and some better, some not so good. But from all of those, lessons can be drawn. So that's one of our focus areas at the moment. We are bringing together earlier when we were chatting before the session started. I was sharing with Mr. Kim and thanking him for a session that we organized yesterday. ADP invited senior policy makers from the region, including from Indonesia, to listen to the lessons learned from Korea, from the Korean Ministry of Finance. We have next week, we have sessions between Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand on very senior top level economic decision makers. So to share what works, what doesn't work, under which circumstances, that is very important in the immediate term. So we spend a lot of time on this right now. But then we're also looking at the medium term. We are preparing country strategy. In fact, we were about to submit to our management, to the government, and to our board for approval a new country strategy for Indonesia. We obviously have held back, and we are we have to COVID-ize it, as we call it. We will have a very strong focus on four areas. The economic recovery from COVID obviously is one. Economic and fiscal policy planning will be a big part of it. Secondly, and then it's all that pointed out earlier, the human capital development, the health security, the social protection, the education and skills that are required for the not only for the recovery but for the medium and in fact for the long term for the economy to be competitive. Another area we will focus on is the acceleration of private and public investments, including also structural reforms, as well as an area where we will focus now more than ever is around resilience. Resilience to natural disasters, resilience to pandemics, and very importantly, the climate change, which then brings me to my last point that I think Satu very rightly pointed out, and others as well. There are opportunities now to build back better, as it were. There is no such thing as a good crisis shouldn't be wasted, as the saying goes. Structural reforms. Indonesia is aspiring to become from an emerging upper middle income level to a higher income level. That's from $4,000 roughly to $12,000 per capita GDP GNI per annum. That's quite a long way. Indonesia is on its way, but never mind the setback right now through the COVID, which we're talking about a few years, and then back on the trajectory. But the structural reforms, the competitiveness, productivity required to turn Indonesia into a modern economy that competes internationally. Those are areas that this is a good time now to focus on, as well as that's my last point. We should not forget, as Shaf mentioned, the green recovery path, as the climate change issues. We must not forget. We must not have quick wins without being smart about the quick wins. So we have to keep in mind the important, much more existential issues such as climate change. They're more existential than COVID in the longer term. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak, for all of the notes, policies of ADB, and Leo has. And I think what's important is the cooperation among countries in the region. I think we need to start doing that. And the other thing is to stay taking care of the topic on climate change. The development should be green. Now, that is really aligned with sustainable development goals anyway. And I do hope that the country strategy for the medium term that is now being being approved soon by the board, so that we could start working even closer with GDP. Now we have some remarks again from Pak Kim. Pak Kim, before you answer the question, I really have to mention to you, on behalf of the government of Indonesia, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude back to the government of Korea for providing early assistance during this pandemic situation. Now, please accept our sincere gratitude and thanks to the government of Korea. Would you like to answer the question, Pak?
Sure, yes. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Ibu Nina. And that's kembali because Indonesia dan Korea adalah dinasti dan sehati. So I think this is quite natural for us to extend our very best assistance to our Indonesian friends. About the question, my answer is yes. there are changes in focuses and priorities, and more changes to follow in the coming future. Korea will further gear up its level of development cooperation with Indonesia, especially in Indonesia's responses to COVID-19 pandemic during and after this crisis. Korea's focus will be on people. It is in line with Korea's new Southern policy, which is a policy initiative to deepen and expand partnership with ASEAN and member states, but including Indonesia in particular, to achieve so-called people-oriented prosperity. Korea's primary aid agency, the Korea International Cooperation Agency, which is called KOICA, is now setting out a new agenda reflecting the challenges and needs coming from this coronavirus pandemic. It is called Agenda for Building Resilience Against COVID-19 through Development Cooperation. It is a very new one. It is to save lives and to promote safe livelihoods. It will be based on sharing with partners Korea's experience and technology-based expertise and also resources to build capacity in preparation for the post-COVID-19 era. It is divided into two stages. The first stage is response. The second stage is resilience. It is more in line with what Bapak Suarzo, Bapak Menteri and Pak Leo has illustrated in his national agenda. It will be approach. It will be applicable to our partnership with Indonesia as well. First of all, the Korean government is putting greater emphasis on helping Indonesia's ongoing responses to combat this pandemic by assisting its medical and quarantine capabilities. Against this backdrop, let me share with you some of the Korea's previous assistance. Korea provided 500,000 US dollars worth of PCR test kits and disinfectant sprayers for BNPB at the very beginning in April. In addition to that, Korea is setting up inclusive responsive program on COVID-19 exclusively for Indonesia with a total amount of 5 million US dollars. The program is for an emergency and early response. It consists of several components, mainly supply of emergency items, medical equipment, support for ongoing projects, and civil society in collaboration with PMI and NGOs. The program will be hopefully expected to be implemented within the second half of 2020 this year. KOICA, the aid agency, is ready to start an initial discussion with Bapenas and BNPB on this emergency support program very soon. Paleo, hopefully that I would like to see Bapenas support and coordination in expediting its consultation process with concerned ministries and agencies. And from a more medium-term perspective, Korea is planning to work together with the Indonesian government in augmenting its resilience capacity in public health system. The Korean government is willing and prepared to provide economic development cooperation fund is a kind of soft loan for Indonesia. The fund can be used for supply of necessary medical and health system, which will be need for Indonesia to conduct public health system reformation and beef up health infrastructure building. I would like to ask once again Bapenas to coordinate with concerned ministry, especially with the Ministry of Health, to speedily work out this program. I will stop here and then thank you so much. Terima kasih.
Pak Kim, terima kasih banyak Pak. Terima kasih for, of course, helping the government of Indonesia at the very early stage of this pandemic. The provision of PCR and the test kit, and also the coming assistance for the medium term perspective to help building or improving the resilience capacity in our health system. And I think it's completely in line with what our minister said at the beginning. Thank you very much, Pak. And I believe Leo will coordinate this collaboration with the Ministry of Health to start the program together. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are so glad that we still have more than 1,300 participants in this webinar. So, the distinguished panelists, our webinar is watched by more than 1,300 participants from a number of countries. And we have also around 60 questions uh, since now we are approaching almost uh, 12 o'clock. I'm sorry that I will have to only pick one. Pick one that is that can be addressed to all of the panelists. The question is uh, uh, not only to the World Bank and ADB, we would like also to get the views from the Australian government that is represented by Ambassador Alistair Cox, and also Kim, the Ambassador of Korea, and of course Pak Winfried, and also Pak Ibu Satu. Pak Peter, you can also jump into the question. Now, the question is coming from Hans Aklov. He said that millions of Indonesian vulnerable households are pushed back into poverty since there were no cover available. Where does the development partner see opportunities for the new normal to be more equitable? Can, for instance, development funding become more flexible to build buffer of idleness into social protection system to soften external shocks such as COVID-19? And I would like to address to Pak Winfried. Winfried, can you start sharing your view on this question?
Yeah, no, sure. I think this is really this is the key question. What's when we spoke earlier about depending on the scenario, the 2 to 10 million Indonesians which will be pushed into poverty, but that number does not include those who will be the upcoming middle class, lower middle class, emerging middle class that will be pushed down closer to maybe just above the poverty line, which is not included in those already large numbers. So it's a huge problem, and a lot of the tremendous gains that Indonesia had made until now will probably be undone at least for a while. And I frankly, I'm afraid it's also not going to after a year when maybe a vaccine is available. I don't think that will the increase in poverty will immediately go away. So there is a lot of thinking has to go into how to address it, but also how to take opportunities. And we spoke earlier about this, how to turn the crisis into an opportunity to create a more equitable development. So a number of measures that come to mind. Number one is the immediate jumps immediately to mind, of course, the social protection systems. Indonesia has a very good and quite developed system of cash and non-cash conditional transfers, and that can be strengthened and is being further strengthened. The World Bank is supporting that, and ADB supporting this now as well, and more so in future. It's one area. Another area is particularly for the young people, the education and skills, especially now skills, those who are pushed out of jobs. Keep them skilled at the skill level that they don't de-skill, and also young graduates try to get the skill level up. And in fact, keep in mind already what we talked until only 3 months ago when we talked about the skill levels needed for the new economy, for technology, the age of technology, etc. So there's no step in skilling towards it. And the other large area, of course, is infrastructure. The infrastructure stock in Indonesia is still very underdeveloped. In fact, it has never really recovered from the Asian financial crisis. So access to schools, to hospitals, to markets has been a problem. Electrification in rural areas has been issue. So infrastructure is another large area. And then, of course, talking about new technologies, the financial market access to finance will be very important, increasingly important, and for a recovery strategy to uh, enable people to get small microloans, particularly in formal sector, but also small small and medium enterprises as well. Last point I might make is the climate change. I feel just keep climate change is not only for the is important for the green growth path, but it also is an employment generator. So, so that's another incentive for thinking green. Thank you. Thank you, Pavitri, for the uh, the elaborative answers of PBB, what PBB is going to do. I think around five things that ADB would like to work with the government of Indonesia. And I can again underline the climate change that will have to be focused aside from, of course, the social protection system and then the skills for the young, uh, the youth force, and then the infrastructure as well as access to finance to respond to this pandemic era. Now, Peter, I am really sorry that you will have to leave soon, shortly, right? Due to other agenda. And would you mind answering the question as well as provide your closing remarks, Mike? Because I will ask each of the panelists very short closing remark at the end. Since you will have to go, would you like to answer the question as well as providing us with the closing remark? Please, Papita.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very sorry that I have only 10 minutes, but then I will have to leave. But given the opportunity to make some comments on this question, on which certainly we are not. I think Winfried and Ibusato are much better placed to comment on that. But I think, on a general note, I think it is important. We have been observing and monitoring, of course, with a lot of attention the measures that the government undertook to strengthen social policies. And of course, I think with you and other ministries, we are interested to see and to analyze to what extent these policies are well targeted, to what extent these policies also are addressing the issue of the transformation. Because as I mentioned in my opening statement for this little example from Lombok, one intelligent way is, of course, for people to lose their job to engage on schemes of skills training, which might be useful and create added opportunity for those concerned. But I think in general, is probably for everybody who looks at as an expert at these issues a very interesting example to see how we can make the social tissue of the societies more resilient and to find which policies correspond best to this objective. And I think, again, a lot has to do also with our dialogue and to see how other countries are coping and dealing with this. And it's an interesting policy dialogue. Um, as you said, and as I have to leave soon, there are two or three points that I wanted to make more of a general nature. And that is again to point to the very important external policies dimension of the current crisis. I mean, everybody, of course, is struggling in his own garden to manage this crisis. But of course, we are confronted, of course, if we look at the big narratives with quite substantial questions. I mean, there is this narrative of the so-called strategic autonomy, which is on the surface a very understandable reaction to what we see, to reshore and to make sure that we redirect investment and production of manufacturing in certain areas back home. On the other hand, I mean, in our view, this cannot be the solution, but the solution must be to find an intelligent balance of a multilateral system with strong and active and resilient partners who are, of course, able to create synergies from international trade. And this is why it's so important, I think, that these initiatives, like the one that the Redno undertakes with 8 or 10 foreign ministers, this ministerial coordination group on COVID, which just analyzes the supply chains in health materials, to see where can we sort of generate gains and create synergies and support each other mutually. I think this will be very important that we end up in a trade world which is not just marked by a strategic autonomy-minded mindset of nations who all try to look at themselves and we ignore the big opportunities, of course, that international trade presents. So that is a very important thing. The second thing that I would like to say is I was yesterday participating in an interesting webinar organized by DP, and I believe it is a very good opportunity for Indonesia to and for us as development partners to include maybe in a more broader way the entire field of research and innovation into our policies. I mean, there are so many universities where vaccines are tested, where medications are tested. There's a considerable effort here in this country to to mobilize the pharmaceutical expertise in this country to be part of this. And I mean, I think Alistair mentioned before this issue of the database that is important for intelligent policy decisions, and I think there is a lot of best practices now around which, Ambassador Kim, the Korean example, I mean, we in Europe, I mean, we have a mixed picture, but I think in Germany still it's also not so bad. So how can you actually generate a good database for your policy decisions and also as a basis to communicate to your societies? And the very last point I would like to make, if I may, which is the political. I think for my country, it is very important that we organize ourselves in our countries and in the European Union and in other parts of the world in a way which demonstrates that open societies and democracies are actually as able to cope with this kind of challenges as
To double down, in effect, on all the things that we've been doing collectively in Indonesia to reduce, to try to reduce inequality, to improve the governance, to deliver better services more effectively locally to the people with better data, with better systems that link everything from the village up to the to the kabupaten, to the province, to the national, and so I think that um, work on governance with better data, allowing local authorities to better deliver services, including social assistance. That's the key to it. So, I mean, I think in a way, COVID just is like a major test of the system that's already been developing in Indonesia, and I think with improving that, I mean, this is what we found, for example, with the problem of stunting. Indonesia was already making progress to try to bring those stunting levels, which had gone up since the end of the new order. But then from 2013, we saw stunting beginning to go down again from around 37% down to 30% last year. And I think the risk is, of course, now that stunting may go backwards. But we need to ensure that the lessons learned about better coordination of government, better data, better work at the local level, delivering services to people based on
information and coordination. All of those lessons are absolutely critical to ensuring that inequality doesn't go back, well, it may go backwards a bit, but not go backwards too far, and that we can use the governance gains that Indonesia has made to ensure that this doesn't this problem doesn't take us too far backwards, and all the good things that have been done help to take us forward. So I think it all comes down to that governance and data and delivering services that people need at the local level based on what they are articulating they need through their local leaders, and that leaders are coordinating and working together. I think to go with what Peter said before, that's the key. It's not about authoritarian system versus non-authoritarian. It's about coordination. It's about working together. It's about listening to the demands of the people and responding flexibly to that. And systems of governance, be they from democracies like Korea or or Australia, New Zealand, or Germany, through to other non-democratic systems like China. It's not about authoritarian versus not authoritarian. It's about the quality of the governance and the responsiveness to local demands, systems of data, and the strength of the governance system. It's not about the system of it's not about democracy versus non-democracy. Anyway, that's some comments from me. Thanks.
Alastair, thank you so much for answering the question. Indeed, the question was addressing inequality, and I'm glad that you were bringing better data for us to tackle our problems now, and of course to work better with the local government and ensuring social services is delivered and well targeted and timely. And of course, the other thing is the international collaboration, and this is why we have this webinar actually to consolidate the international cooperation with the government of Indonesia that Bapenas is initiated and supported by KSI. And I would like to, in that question, I would like Ibu Satu to respond to that, Ibu. Please, Ibu Satu, what is the World Bank panelist? Is the only lady in the panelist? It's Ibu. Together with me. That's the one.
I realize we are the only ladies in this panel.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. It's the quality of ladies, so okay. Sorry, I couldn't resist to say that. No, but the question that was posed, it's actually excellent question, and because we on the World Bank side, we have also stepped up the monitoring of poverty, monitoring of macro, monitoring of a lot of things during the crisis, and according to our estimates, as a result of this crisis, up to 10 million additional. trade any restrictions to investment, because Indonesia will be better off the more investment, domestic investment, foreign investment, it can attract to the country. Let me stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Satu. There are all important issues that have been raised. Will, I know he is taking all the notes stated by our honorable panelists, and the line six things that Ibu Satu mentioned. I will put the last one, the equal opportunity to entering business and trade. I think this is really important. And the other thing, besides uh, productive inclusive growth, that goes into human development, social protection, education, health system, and then to start thinking the uh, you were saying about the unemployment insurance. I think this will have to be also considered by Fahri, aside from what other issues there are important. Finally, I will ask Pakin. I know that you are going to leave. Now, my watch tells me that it's already 12, but please, Pakin, can you answer the question for us?
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Lina.
Terima kasih, Pak.
Thank you so much for all the insightful comments. And as for the question from the audience, I do echo what previous speakers have mentioned and explained. One saying in Bahasa Indonesia is always resonating in my heart when we were discussing this whole issues. Ringan sama dijinjing, berat sama dipikul. I think the entire crisis, we should shoulder the burdens together. We should do heavy lifting together. I think that is quite a spirit that we all here feeling in the midst of this whole discussions. And in addition to what our previous speakers have very eloquently pointed out, I just want to highlight two important kind of points that might be relevant and also quite requisite for uh, the purpose of reflecting this. This. meaningful webinar. One small suggestion, maybe I would like to post to Paleo and the Bapenas, because in order to be more efficient and effective in delivering our resources out to our people and friends in Indonesia, I think we may be a bit flexible and adapting ourselves to new environment because we do understand that there's a current process in channeling development partners' resources into real actions such as blue book and green book filings. Uh, is quite effective in peacetime. I mean, the peacetime means during this kind of conventional, ordinary circumstances. But the COVID-19 crisis is demanding us to act swiftly and to act differently. Taking into account this unprecedented scale of challenges and urgency of our actions on the ground, I strongly feel that current process should be more flexible enough to accommodate priority changes and refocusing and reallocation of resources and readjustment of programs so that we could hopefully to cope with newly emerging needs in a more effective way. Thank you once again, and I hope to see you soon. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Terima kasih banyak Pak Kim. Thank you very much for delivering your closing remarks as well. I know that you have to leave. We still have one more issue, that is the closing remarks actually. Thank you Pak Kim for joining. Thank you Pak Kim for joining this webinar. Thank you so much. Now it's already more than 12. It's already 12:10. We must wrap up because of we've been undergoing this discussion since 10 o'clock. Um, this is my last question to Pak Winfrey, Bu Satu, and Pak Esther uh, to provide your closing remarks. As the minister stated in his opening speech to respond to COVID-19, Indonesia has been refocusing the development plan for 2021 to certainly address issues of economic recovery and social reforms. The four main areas of development focus that will be addressed next year is one, recovery of industry, tourism, and investment.
To ensure that the economic recovery of Indonesia goes hand in hand with the fight against the virus. And I think the Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister, the areas that he mentioned, they are really critical. But let me mention also a couple of other issues, because this crisis has clearly heightened the importance and urgency to proceed with many reforms to ensure the well-being of citizens.